Welcome to today's lecture, Collaborative Care in Pediatric Practice, which will focus on family-centered care and teaming. My name is Kendra Gagnon. I am a pediatric physical therapist and a professor of. So in this session, we are going to define family-centered care, describe key elements of family-centered care, and compare and contrast various models of team interaction and service delivery. And to sort of set the stage for today, I wanted to share this with you. This is a figure from a blog post written by a mom with a child with a disability. And she mapped out this idea of what does it really take to raise a child with a disability? And you can see here, she's got her child in the center, surrounded by her family. And then all of these little kind of color-coded extensions that kind of web out. So looking at health, developmental assessment, school, advocacy, recreation, community, and support. And then all of the little pieces of support and community. And if you're looking for PT and you haven't found it yet, it's kind of right up here in the red, kind of buried in the middle. And so I think this image, number one, I've had many families with children with disabilities say that they feel like it really does kind of capture kind of the depth and breadth and complexity of raising a child with a disability. But it also really humbles me for a moment as a physical therapist and a provider of physical therapy that, we're just this one little kind of speck in the landscape. And so if we stay sort of siloed just in ourselves here, we just don't really have that much impact. If only PT only happens in that little bubble, in that little circle. But if we can team, if we can, expand our services around this team and then even overflow into some of these other areas where we're helping families in the community, we're supporting them in advocacy, we're helping them with healthy living, it just becomes clear to me how much more of an impact that we can have. And so to me, that just really underscores the importance of providing these really family-centered collaborative services. So what is family-centered care? There are lots of definitions out there. And so I've selected one here to share that I think kind of encompasses the kind of broadly what family-centered care is. And it was written by Law and colleagues back in 2003. And they said, family-centered care is made up of a set of values, attitudes, and approaches to services for children with special needs and their families. Family-centered service recognizes that each family is unique, that the family is the constant in the child's life, and that they are the experts on the child's abilities and needs. The family works with service providers to make informed decisions about the services and supports the child and family receive. In family-centered service, the strengths and needs of all family members are considered. And you may or may not realize it, but there's actually some theory that kind of guides delivery of family-centered services. And one of those theories is the family systems theory. And this theory says that individual and family function is an interactional and dynamic process. So again, the child influences the family and the family influences the child. And it changes and it's dynamic and it's interactive. And family systems theory also says that interventions for the family directly influence child development and function. So when we coach the family on how to promote their child's development, or we help connect them to services that they may need in the community, we actually are directly influencing child development and function. So don't get stuck in this idea that therapy for children only looks like putting your hands on children, direct services for children. Services for children can also include teaching and working with the family, and often that's the most important thing that you're going to do. So some of the factors that influence family-centered intervention include family structure. So who's in the family? Is it an extended family where grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles are all living together? Are there siblings? Is that a two-parent family? Are the parents divorced? Are there step families? What is the structure of the family? And for all of these, there's no right or wrong answer or one that's better than the other. It just is. It's their family structure, but it absolutely influences that child and family and the services that you'll provide. Similarly, the family function is huge. So, how does the family interact together? Who's the primary caregiver? Who takes care of the child during the day? Does the family work? Is there, what's the relationship like between other family members? All of these things, the way the family functions, is very going to really inform your services. The family life cycle. So where is the family at in their life cycle? Often for us, because we're working with young children and their families, the family's life cycle is in that kind of young, growing family stage. But we may be working with people who are aging, and some of our families are working with, they may be caring for aging parents while they have young children. They may be getting ready to transition to the child may be an adolescent getting ready to transition to adulthood. So there's all of these kind of different life cycles of the family, and where they're at in that process may inform your services. Family culture is huge. So, this can be kind of racial, ethnic culture where there's actually kind of some cultural differences, but even within the same kind of ethnic culture, families have their own culture, right? The things that they like to do, the ways that they interact, what they value, their routines, their traditions. And so all of those pieces are very, very important. Also, family stress, resources, and adaptation. This is a huge one. If the family has a lot of stressors, if they are really low on resources, if they are, all of those things are going to really impact your service delivery. Similarly, if the family has a lot of resources and really low stress, that's going to impact your service delivery. And then, of course, service factors. So things about you as the service provider may also influence family-centered intervention. These can be your relationship with the family, your personalities and how you interact, and then just also the different things, about your routines and how you're able to serve the family. But notice that that's kind of at the bottom of the list, that's kind of, we want our service factors to support all of those other pieces of the family. So really the main points, the big ideas of family-centered care is that family plays the central role in the life of the child, and optimal family function promotes optimal child development. So it's important for you to respect the rights and roles of family members, to include not only child but also parent-centered intervention approaches, and to really respect the family as the primary decision maker and the expert on their child. They know their child better than anyone else. And so really when we drill down to the goals of family-centered care, we really want to enhance the health development and functional independence of the child through a partnership with the family and child, and promote quality of life for the family. Because again, we know through that family systems theory, if the family is experiencing good quality of life, that's going to impact the child and have positive impacts on the child's development as well. A few things that we need to remember that sometimes are kind of tricky in family-centered care, because we really, we have a lot of training and expertise in movement, and we often have ideas about what the child needs to work on and what the family should value. But we have to remember that service decisions are not based on the provider's knowledge and expertise. We certainly share our knowledge and expertise to help the family make decisions, but they are the primary decision makers. And that parent and professional partnership, including mutual trust and respect, is critical. And that can be really tricky because often we are working with families who have different values than we do, who have different routines and traditions. And it can be challenging to kind of suspend judgment, but we have to do that. We have to meet our families where they are, and we have to respect their values and their traditions and their family culture. And that's the starting place for us. Information sharing has to be reciprocal, and it has to acknowledge that the families know their child best. So we have to do tons of talking and asking, and asking them, when they're struggling with something, asking them what they've tried, asking them what they want to try. listening if they feel like something won't work, listening and hearing them and understanding that they know their child best. And the beauty of true family-centered care is that it expands the roles of both the provider and the parent. So instead of the provider being the holder of all the knowledge, the person who comes into the home or works with the child and just takes the child away for 30 minutes and does their thing and brings them back, and then the parent does their thing, and we're both in our very specific roles, now suddenly we become an educator and coach to the parent. The parent becomes someone who is proficient in strategies to help their child's development, and we're both empowered. And then finally, family-centered care promotes and supports parenting self-efficacy, family engagement, and big one, participation. When we are involving the family and they're embedding these motor strategies into routines, both their child and the family themselves are able to participate more in their life, which then has this kind of snowball effect of making families' quality of life better, which then enhances more participation. So really cannot overstate how important this family-centered care piece is when we're delivering services to children and families. And it's not only important to really team with the family, we have a team of professionals that we have to interact with and collaborate with. And there are lots of different ways that we can do that. So there's sort of three primary models of team interaction. The first is multidisciplinary. And this is kind of a traditional medical model, kind of approach where professionals work independently. They certainly may recognize the value and contributions of other team members. You send notes to the doctor, you make a phone call to the OT, but you really just work on your own physical therapy stuff in your own environment. So there may be some drawing on knowledge from just different disciplines, but very little interaction. So again, an example of where this could occur is maybe if you think about an outpatient physical therapy clinic where people come there to do very specific, discipline-specific, kind of work towards very discipline-specific goals. And there aren't other professionals. And again, there might be some communication, but it's pretty siloed in that way, or it can be. The next one is interdisciplinary. And this is probably where most kind of care is situated currently. Individuals with different disciplines work together cooperatively to evaluate and develop programs. There's an emphasis on teamwork, and role definitions are relaxed. But we still, kind of all have our different roles and different things we're working on specific to our discipline. And then probably the most contemporary, and maybe one that isn't nearly as common, is transdisciplinary. This is actually quite common now in early intervention, so birth to 3 IDEA Part C services. And in transdisciplinary services, teaching and ongoing work among team members transcends traditional boundaries. Team members work together to develop and carry out intervention. There's tons of role release. One really common form of transdisciplinary services is the primary service provider model. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail here in just a couple of slides. So again, just for the visual here, here's kind of a multidisciplinary services. The child's still in the center, and maybe they have all of these different folks that are part of their team. But those people, the teacher is at school, and the physician is in the clinic, and the speech therapist works with the child in the speech therapy room at the school, and maybe doesn't even overlap with the teacher that much. And the PT sees them in the clinic, and the OT sees them in the clinic. And again, not to suggest that there's not any interaction or overlap, but everybody stays pretty siloed and kind of is working on their own goals and their own plan of care. So in interdisciplinary, these kind of roles start to overlap a little bit. We start to come together a little bit. So a good example of this might be a kind of a traditional school-based model where once a year, all the team members come together to put together the IEP. And so they talk to each other. They have some shared goals. There's some blurring of boundaries where the physical therapist might say to might kind of help the occupational therapist position the child better during their feeding interventions or things like that. But it's still, we all still sort of have our own services and our own goals, even though we may all be working towards a shared goal. So the lines blur a little bit, but they're still, our roles are still pretty defined. And then here's a model of what transdisciplinary services might look like. And so I sort of mentioned the primary service provider model. And so this figure here kind of shows that. So here's your physical therapist in green. And so in a primary service provider model, which is a pretty common type of transdisciplinary teaming, um, in this model, the physical therapist is the primary service provider. So that's the person, the service provider, that has sort of frequent, regular, direct contact with the child and family. And so the physical therapist then is responsible for kind of going back to the team regularly and intentionally and having these team meetings to make sure that they're kind of implementing all the strategies. So in a transdisciplinary model, we're working across and between disciplines. There has to be continuous and collaborative sharing of information. And so, again, an example of this, let's say the child, the physical therapist has a weekly visit with the child and the family. And then maybe they have a monthly visit with the team to report back. And so the physical therapist is in there. And I mean, although they may be, obviously because of their area of expertise focused on gait training, that physical therapy professional may be working on putting together puzzles while they're, standing at a table, or integrating some sign into their, or working on colors and numbers because the teacher wants them working on those things. So the physical therapist or the physical therapist assistant in their interventions kind of becomes, is weaving in all of these other dimensions of development and reporting back to the team regularly so that they can expand and grow those. Now, if for some reason the physical therapist feels like that what they're being asked to do or the child's needs stretches beyond their expertise or requires the expertise of another professional, they may bring that person in for a co-visit. They may bring the occupational or speech therapist or someone else or an assistant in for that purpose. But for the most part, the physical therapist is a primary service provider. And this is kind of agreed upon. There's not a lot of research in this model, but it's kind of agreed upon by experts that when conducted properly, it's really the best model, because what can be really overwhelming for families, if you think back to that care map at the beginning, is all of these services all over the place. So a primary service provider model gives them one person, one primary contact, and all the information goes through that person. So they aren't getting all this conflicting information. And frankly, they're not dealing with dozens of visits a week. They're just kind of managing one person, which can really be helpful. There are some different models of service delivery. Direct is when the therapist is the primary service provider. So that's probably what you primarily think about, is one-on-one kind of direct services. Therapists, though, can also be consultative, so just working with the team to implement recommendations. So this might be very much what it looks like in that primary service provider model if you're not the primary service provider. Monitoring, so we may, for example, implement some adaptations and then monitor just to kind of make sure those are going okay. And then there's also this idea of integrated services, which kind of are a blend of direct and consultative services where they're going to interact with the child and the teacher, aide, and family. And, just like with effective family-centered teaming, there are some principles that are necessary for collaborative teamwork. You have to have equal participation from family members and team members. You have to engage in consensus decision-making for goals and intervention. So you have to agree, or you at least have to get close enough that the whole team can get behind the plan. All skills are embedded throughout the intervention program. So there's no such thing as just PT services or just OT services. We're all sort of integrating all domains of development. We're infusing our knowledge and skills from different disciplines into intervention, and we're engaging in role release. And finally, effective teams learn about each other, demonstrate commitment, honesty, trust, and mutual respect, share a common goal, have structure and organization, and regular intentional communication that's open with equal participation, and they make plans, priorities, and decisions together. So if these pieces are in place, that collaborative teaming can fall apart. And often when models of team interaction aren't effective, it really goes back to the team not really having that trust and communication piece. So this is so, so critical. Here are a few of the references that I used today to pull together this content. And that's all for today. I will see you next time.